Welcome to Accept Your Gifts, the 22-minute podcast for inspiring your most creative life. My name is Tracy Crow. I'm an author, writing coach, and Marine Corps veteran. I'm looking forward to co-creating today's show with you. So if you're ready, are you ready? I'm ready. So if you're ready to live a more creative, more magical life, let's get started. My special guest today is Bernadine Donato, Bernie to everyone who knows her. Bernie is a military veteran. She spent 10 years as a Navy nurse, and then she served in the Air National Guard as a tactical flight nurse, and during both Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. After 24 years, she retired as a lieutenant colonel, but Bernie wasn't quite finished with public service because for 11 years, she served as a reserve LAPD police officer assigned to South Central Los Angeles. Once fully retired, Bernie says her mind was a constant slideshow of images she'd prefer to forget. The bodies, she says, bodies shot, stabbed, beaten, traumatized, and dead. But one day, Bernie ventured into a watercolor class and, well, I'll let Bernie tell you the rest of the story.
Hey, Bernie. Thank you so much for joining us today on Accept Your Gifts. I'm so excited to see you. I wish our listeners could see you, but I get this very special Zoom podcast opportunity with you today. So, honey, it's so good to see you again. Thanks for being here with us.
Well, thanks, Tracy. It's so great to be here, and it's always great to see you, even though everyone else can't see you. And it's always my pleasure.
Oh, thanks. Okay, are you ready to get started?
I am ready.
Okay, here we go. You, my love, have been an inspiration on so many levels. You know, to everyone who knows you, you have this boundless energy. You have this incredible artistic talent that reveals itself through so many mediums. And the story of you as an artist, from what I have read and understand from you, goes all the way back to kindergarten. Will you share that story for our listeners?
When I was in kindergarten, I was a very, 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 very quiet person, which people find hard to believe right now is actually almost withdrawn. But one of the report cards, I'm a saver, and my mother saved things as we grew up. She had envelopes for all 6 kids, and in there was a report card from kindergarten. And in that report card, it says, Bernadine loves art. She likes to experiment, and I can't remember exactly the words all, but with chalk and crayons. And that was obviously the beginning of my art career, only I just didn't know that. As we continued on, I don't know if you wanted me to go that part, but as we continued on in school, I was always creative in a way. I was always sketching or drawing or looking at things outside and trying to figure out how I can put things together. But interesting, when I got into high school, and there wasn't a lot of options in classes in my day of going to school like there are now, but I remember an art teacher that we had who told me that my art wasn't very good. And he didn't like what I drew. Basically, it was drawing. It was no painting or anything. I never took painting at all while I was in school. But he told me I wasn't very good, and that kind of set the stage for a lot of things in the art arena for me later in life.
Can you expand on that? Like, you know, we get those little scripts that people tell us about who we should be, because I can remember one myself. You'll never be a writer. I can never teach you how to write, right? Yeah, 6 books, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But that did stick with me for decades. So in what way did that affect you, hearing that from this teacher?
I think the biggest way it affected me, well, number one, it's always filed in your mind. And I think you'll agree with that. When someone tells you something negative like that, you file in your mind. And I remember when we were just doing drawing in high school art classes, we weren't doing anything like wild and creative. And I was trying to draw on people, which I'm still not great at. And I remember overhearing him tell another student that I was always drawing hippies and I wasn't very good at it. And so that kind of, I was not a very self-assured person when I was young anyway, and I was totally withdrawn and quiet. It was totally different person than I am now. So I didn't have a lot of self-confidence to begin with, and then you hear someone say that about you and your talents. So you go over the years, and sure, you can fast forward up to my age, which is in the 60s now. I dabbled in art, and I would draw things and do that. But always in the back of my mind was, I'm not really good, so I'm just doing it. So I remember always making excuses for it. I say something, I said, and people say, oh, that's really great. And I say, oh, well, thank you, I'm not really good at this. And so I think that's how it affected me, because somewhere in my mind, I filed that.
At what point, let me jump in, at what point would you say you were finally ready to be done with that script? Was there a moment that you realized, wait a minute, I really am pretty good at this?
I would actually say that point is when I say now, I didn't realize it now, but a couple of years ago when I started painting when I moved here to North Carolina and I retired. I started painting about 5 years ago. And at the beginning, I was still insecure. I'm not sure really, And then as I progressed and I look at my work now, and all of a sudden I just said, you know what? I am really good at this. And the hell with what other people say about it. And I have said to friends, my art, when they say your painting is amazing, I have to say to friends, my art teacher in high school told me I wasn't very good. So I still bring it up, but I just had a painting that went to an Australia exhibition. So
I know, I love that. Okay. So tell us, you joined the military, and did you have art in your life throughout all of these years as a nurse, and then as an LA Reserve police officer? I mean, was art still there, or was it kind of on the back burner for you?
So art was pretty much on the back burner for me for a lot of my life, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Well, number one, obviously, when I went to school to be a nurse, it's a really intense school. It's really intense, and of course, we'd always dabble. I'd make little cartoons and funny things and show them to people, and especially in class, when you get bored, you show them to people. And even when I went to the Los Angeles Police Academy to be a reserve officer, I was in the military at the same time, so I had a civilian job. By that time, it was active duty to begin with. And so really, I never did anything that was, did you say, that really stands out? When I say that, it's not because what I did was bad. It's just I just dabbled. But I didn't go out and buy paints or buy sketchbooks or buy anything like that because really, I never had the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I was on the back burner for a long time. I do have to say, when I deployed to the first Gulf War, one of the things we did as we're sitting there, and anybody who knows who's been to a war zone, especially in the nurse field, there's a lot of waiting. So during those waitings, we'd find old pieces of cardboard stuff. We made a whole big thing with street signs, and I made say Los Angeles 10,000 miles, and put a palm tree on it, and Massachusetts, Boston, X amount of miles, put a crab on it. So I did things like that, a lot of little fun stuff. But yeah, it was fun. It was not a lot of, when I call it the serious stuff, and I have a photo of that. It's really funny.
More than one way to find an outlet for creativity, right? Even in a war zone, you can find something creative to do, right?
Absolutely. What an amazing outlet it is.
Bernie, you never shy away from the fact that you're working through an unusual health challenge. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that and how maybe turning toward creativity supports you through those challenges?
Absolutely. I've actually been through some major health challenges, and I could start by saying that it's amazing how many people look at me and say, I don't know what's wrong with you. You look fine. And that's an interesting concept. It's like how can you look at somebody and tell what they are? So I have a couple of autoimmune disorders, and autoimmune meaning your body basically just rejects itself. So the first one is rheumatoid arthritis, which is an inflammatory form, and that means you're getting lots of itises, tendonitis, synovitis, and bursitis and stuff like that. Mine isn't certainly as bad as many others are. It does affect, sometimes your joints are like, you're like a robot. It can get so painful, you're like a robot. My hands blow up like little sausages. The other one, I just recently got diagnosed in the last few years, is another autoimmune called myasthenia gravis. And that's a big word for saying that your nerves were fine, your muscles were fine, but that communication between the two, that little chemical that goes over to check into your muscle to make it contract, is being blocked by your own antibodies. And so what does that mean? What does that mean? That means that sometimes you get so tired and your muscles get so weak, you can barely stand up and get off the couch. And it affects your muscles like your thighs and your arms, and it can affect your hands. And the kicker is you can stop breathing because it affects your respiratory muscles. So that's significant. And the treatment for that is I go get plasma exchange once a month. So I have this port underneath my skin, and I go there. They put these huge mega needles in my port. In exchange, I sit there for 2.5 hours, maybe a little bit more, and they take out all my plasma and put synthetic new stuff in there. And I call it an oil change. It's like, hey, look at that. And I just happened to have Plex this morning. I said, so it's an oil change, and it's like a booster to me, and say, yay, look at this. And all those bad antibodies are away. So my muscles will work really great for a while. So how does that affect me creatively? I do a lot of painting now, and I do drawing. I do Zentangle, which is repetitive pattern drawing, which is very, very fine work. You've seen my paintings, so you see I do a lot of detailed paintings. It affects my work in that I have to stand up and move around a lot. And that's number one. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it is. I get blurred vision, so I have to get up and walk away from that. My hands particularly, because the rheumatoid arthritis and myasthenia affects my hands. Sometimes the cramps, I'm holding onto a paintbrush, the cramps are so bad that I can't even, I have to manually pull my fingers apart off the brush and try to get the cramps out of my hands. And that's those two diseases. So it can be frustrating, especially when I really want to spend a couple hours working on a painting or working on a Zentangle, but I just can't physically. And so that's very frustrating to me. So I do get lost in my work. I have a hashtag that says tune out, unwind, and create. And for me, art is just like a huge escape from everything. I don't even turn music on my house, and I get lost. There's nothing, that continuous slideshow of all the bad things I've seen and all the trauma I've seen just shuts off for a while.
Ah, wow. So is that for me, I call it going into the zone, where time itself just disappears when we don't have all these other monkey brain chattering thoughts going on.
Right.
We're in that creative zone, and we're about as present as we can possibly be as a human being. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, I would agree with that. I kind of, as I say, my hashtag's tune out, unwind, and create. I call it saying, like, if somebody texts me, I usually don't have the phone near me, but if somebody keeps sending me a message, I just say, I'm checked out in art right now, and that's it. Don't bother me. So yeah, that's exactly it. The creativity part kind of consumes your brain. I get consumed by what I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make something that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so it's really, I mean, it's just so nice just to have that empty mind, that all those things that you think of and all the things that may bother you or all the things that you've seen in the past don't come creeping up to make you feel sad, depressed, anxious, whatever.
Exactly. Oh, I'm going to throw this question at you.
Sure.
Who do you think Bernie would be if she weren't an artist?
That's interesting, because I was asked that question in an interview once.
Really? Okay.
And I would say there were a couple of things, and they were all creative. There were two things I think. I said I would like to be a photographer, and that is an artist, but I said I would follow Stacey Pearsall anywhere and I'd be a combat photographer. But I said I'd like to be a dancer.
Ah, I love it. Okay.
And it's all artistic. Isn't that interesting? And
yes. What does that say about you, Bertie?
So you'd say, why did you pick being a nurse? You want to know why? And I'm older than you are, but I think you'll still understand this concept. In my day, I graduated from high school in 1970. Women did four things. They were nurses, teachers, secretaries, got married and had kids. And so I went one of those traditional routes. My aunt was a nurse, And I said, well, that's pretty cool. I love her and she's a great person. So I actually ended up going to the same school. And did I like it? Yes, I loved it because I'm a people person. I love to work with people. But is it hard? And it does part of that affect my life now? Yes. Yes, it's a very, very, very both emotionally and physically demanding job. So
Right. Bernie, when you hear that phrase, live your most creative life, what does that mean to you?
Well, there's different ways of being a creative life, and you could start out with the simplistic ones of you take a paintbrush and put it on a canvas, you take a pen and put it on a paper, etc. But there's so much to living a creative life that I see in everything. I look at the sky and I go, oh my God, look at the sky. That's so beautiful. Look at those clouds. How about this? How about that? I'll look at the corner of a building or I'll look at the bricks on the building and I'll actually look and see the way they're formed, the different colors of the bricks. And I will look at a person and say the homeless guy is sitting on a corner. I'll actually look and in my mind, things will say like, oh, look, his pants look new, but he looks like he hasn't had any socks in a long while. Look at his face. I wonder what he did in his life. I wonder what happened that made him what he is today. I see creativity in everything. It just surrounds me in my life. And it's not something you can necessarily define. It's just the way you live. So I see.
Do you agree that that's a principle that means that anyone can actually live a more creative life if they just open and broaden their awareness?
Absolutely. I agree. I have a good friend, and he's kind of a black and white person. When I say a black and white person, he worked in marketing his whole life. So he sees everything as, well, this is this and this. And this is this and this, and that's it. And he doesn't see the creative. He doesn't see, like when I say, oh, look at that guy. Yeah, look at this guy. Yeah, they don't have that. More of a nebulous way to live life.
Okay.
They just see every year B, and that's it. There's no C, D, E, and F.
Yeah, I was really interested too in that part you were talking about with the homeless man. When you're musing about, I wonder what his story is, does that actually inform what you will end up creating in the way of art if you were to decide to paint that homeless man?
It does. So I can use a couple of examples, but by saying first that I create by inspiration. If I'm inspired by something, I want to create it. So the example I used is an Army veteran 2 paintings ago, because I just finished another one, an Army veteran who's wheelchair bound, who does this one race in a hand cycle that we come out and help him up the hills. And I took this photograph, and I looked at the photograph, looked at his face, and he's in a zone, his face in a zone, and that so inspired me. I had to paint that. So my mind thinks when I look at that face is he's not thinking about right now that he's angry sometimes. He's not thinking about that. That's what my mind saw.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah, he was in his own zone at that point.
Yes.
What do you wish that people understood more about the healing benefits of living a creative life?
I think a lot of times people classify artists as just those are in my day, those are just a bunch of hippies who don't want to work, and they throw something on a piece of paper, and particularly abstract artists, they throw something on a piece of paper. What is that? I mean, who would buy that stuff? But I wish they would understand that even just in the art itself or living a creative life is you see so much more out of life. You don't see the guy in the corner as just a homeless person. You see that person as someone that probably has feelings, that has history, that might have been right where you are today, but something happened in his life, 1 paycheck, 2 paychecks away, and there he is now. Wow. And I wish they would also see that any kind of art, even the guy who spray paints a little Kilroy picture on the wall, any kind of art provides focus, it provides socialization. I'll say the class of socialization. I do art workshops at the VA, and they actually have to get a recreational therapy consult. They come in, and everybody says, a lot of them will say, I'm not an artist, I don't know how to do that. And they'll look at I bring the paint and go, oh my God, I can't do that. And guess what? They look like at the end of the class. They are so proud, and it's a sense of accomplishment. A sense of accomplishment that you saw something. That art isn't just throwing things on a canvas. And art is in your soul and it's in your mind. And when you figure out that life is much better with something you do, something you take from nothing and make it exist, that life is a better thing. And you see more things out of people.
Ah, so true. Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm going to throw this one at you. Okay, so you wake up in the morning. What are your typical wake-up thoughts? Are you a hit the floor running kind of gal, or do you start your day differently?
So I am not a morning girl. I have to tell you that. I'm not a morning girl. So I get up in the morning and, do the routine and brush your teeth and the first thing I do, which is really interesting, is I go open all of my blinds because I love airy. I love light and airy. So when it's raining, my house is still a little dark, but I just love the concept of the outside coming in my house. And that might be part of my creative mind. I do think the first thing I'm going to do is what I've learned to do is actually the night before I've started making lists, because as you get older, you forget things. Just take a list. And even with my art, I'll say, today I want to accomplish finishing this rectangle elephant. So when I get up in the morning, as soon as I finally wake up, my mind just goes 3,000 miles an hour of all the things I want to do. But I will set the day and I'll say, today, I'll go to the gym in the morning, but it's for painting, and that's it.
Ah, love that.
How my
But you're starting with
this hour is for reading.
Oh, wonderful. So you're setting intentions for yourself.
Yes, and I like to set a little goals. Well, the reason I make the list is because if there's one thing I want to go pick up the store, I'll stop at the gym on the way home. I guarantee you, if I don't write it on a piece of paper, I'm not getting it. And then I'll go to the store and buy everything around it and come home with the one thing that I wanted. So
I hear you, sister. I hear you.
I'll do it for artwork. Like tomorrow I'm doing a workshop at the VA and we're going to do acrylic pour and everybody's all excited. So I do have to make the list to say everything we bring and what do I want them to get out of this? It's not just the materials I pick up and bring. What do I want them to get out of this?
Oh, I love that too. You and I spend a lot of our days working with veterans. I spend a lot of my time working through the writing medium, using writing as a pathway to self-healing, and you use your art and writing. But what I wonder is a myth or two that you would just like to debunk about veterans right now.
All right, the first myth I want to debunk is not all veterans go to war. The kids, particularly the kids, and they have to get that somewhere. They think veteran war. That's all being a veteran's about. That's all the military's about, and they don't understand all the humanitarian missions and all that stuff. Number two, veteran artist. So if you're a veteran and you're an artist, you're going to paint some picture about a war. That you're not going to paint pictures with flowers, or you're not going to write a book about romance like someone we know just did. That you were always going to have some kind of painting or something about soldiers and somebody getting killed. Well, the other thing is veteran and women. Do you know that women do serve in the military? And from a personal experience, it's do you know women retire from the military? This is not my husband's ID card, and he is not my sponsor. Because A, I don't have a husband, and B, I spent 24 years, 3 months, and 16 days, and I am a veteran, and I'm a woman, and I am both.
Yes. Well, Bernie, from the bottom of my heart, you are the epitome of someone who is living her most creative life. You are creating with every breath you take, my dear, and we are all so grateful for you. So thank you so much for spending this time today with me and with our listeners. I love you to pieces, girlfriend.
Thank you so much, Tracy. This has been a pleasure. And I think the last thing I have to say is I don't want to be that person that on my day to cross the Rainbow Bridge, I say, I wish I had. I don't want to be it. If you want to get the best out of life, you've got to go out and live it.
Beautiful.
So thanks for everything. Love you, Tracy.
Love you too.
I hope you enjoyed today's co-creative listening experience. Please remember to leave a comment about the single greatest takeaway for you today. You know, that one thing you will remember from this day forward. Was it something funny or provocative? Was it just what you needed to hear? Please share so we can all benefit. And remember to return Tuesdays and Thursdays to accept your gifts, the 22-minute podcast for inspiring your most creative life.